Hey everyone, if you're serious about military hardware and hate shallow takes, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. This story will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about modern warfare. And I want to hear from you. Do you agree with this bold American perspective? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The Lost Killer. How an old Soviet tank everyone was ashamed of became Russia's secret ace. A view from across the Atlantic that will shock you. Picture this for a moment. Dust, smoke, the thunder of artillery. Not some abstract battlefield, but a real one. Somewhere in the Donbass, Syria, or the outskirts of Artsakh. A battle is raging. And it's not decided by some futuristic cyber tank from a sci-fi blockbuster, armed with lasers and cloaking tech. It's decided by an old, reliable, almost museum-worthy 72. That very tank Western journalists and analysts spent decades writing off, calling it an obsolete death trap, while boasting about their own high-tech Abrams and Leopards. Now ask yourself this. Why is it still here? Why isn't it just surviving, but dominating? Why does its simple, angular silhouette still command not just fear, but deep respect on 21st century battlefields? The answer isn't just in steel and gunpowder. It lies in philosophy, economics, and a massive geopolitical chess game we're all watching unfold. And one of the most surprising, shocking, and in its own way brilliant answers came from an American tank veteran. A man who once sat behind the controls of the very machine designed to destroy the T-72. This isn't just an article. It's a 50-year detective story. A tale of how a brilliant mistake by Soviet engineers outlived its own country, survived decades of ridicule, and became the black swan that rewrote all the rules. So grab a seat. We're diving straight into the heart of steel and fire. Part 1. The messenger from the other side. Who is this American, and why should we care? Before we talk hardware, let's talk about the man behind the insight. Because without trust in the source, even the boldest idea crumbles. Meet Brandon Weichert. He's no armchair theorist writing dissertations based on internet photos. This is a man who's got gunpowder and diesel in his blood. The descendant of German immigrants, which already gives him a unique lens, straddling two cultures and mindsets. But more importantly, he's an Iraq War veteran, a tanker. He sat inside the M1 Abrams, the ultimate symbol of American armored might. He knows what it's like to fight inside a steel box baked by Middle Eastern sun to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. He's felt firsthand what it's like to face enemy armor, likely those same old Soviet T-55s and T-72s. He's lived through the hell that most of us only see in YouTube clips. After the war, he didn't become a security guard or a truck driver like so many veterans. His sharp mind and analytical instincts found a home in the U.S. Congress. He's seen the military machine from both sides, as a soldier and as a policy staffer. Now, he's a respected defense analyst whose insights are featured in major outlets like the National Interest. Why does this matter? Because when someone like him talks about Russian tanks, he's not coming from a place of your gear sucks, ours rules. He speaks as a practitioner who's seen the strengths and weaknesses of both sides. His perspective isn't propaganda, it's surgical. And that's what makes it so shocking. Part 2. The bomb he dropped. The T-72 saved Russia. That's the exact thesis Weichert opens with. Imagine the reaction of an American reader who's spent years absorbing the narrative of a corrupt, backward Russian military. Now they're being told, your main rival wasn't saved by Armada tanks or super guns, but by the old, reliable T-72. It sounds like heresy, like provocation. But let's dig deeper. What was the T-72 in the world's eyes before recent events? An outdated model, a poor man's tank, a machine easily destroyed. It was mocked, feared, mostly by its own crews, and written off. But Weichert looks beyond the surface. He calls it nothing less than the T-34 of the Cold War. And that's a brilliant analogy. Remember history. Why did the T-34 become legendary? Not because it was invincible, Germans pierced its armor. Not because it was the most advanced, early models had plenty of teething problems. But because it was balanced. It combined three key traits: simplicity, reliability, and mass production. That's exactly what turned the T-72 into the weapon Weichert says carries the entire burden. He draws a parallel to Iraq. Remember? Saddam Hussein's massive paper tiger army, loaded with Soviet gear, was crushed in days by the US-led coalition. The conclusion back then was simple. Soviet design lost, Western design won. But Weichert urges us to look again. The problem wasn't the tanks, it was who was operating them and how. The Iraqi army lacked motivation, proper logistics, training, and above all, fighting spirit. But when that same 72 lands in the hands of well-trained, motivated crews who know their machine inside and out, the game changes completely. His core insight, worth carving in stone, most of the complex new systems developed by Russia and the West over the past 30 years aren't actually being used. And in this failed scenario, reminiscent of Iraq, it's the T-72 that's carrying the load. In plain terms, while everyone was playing with nanotech and building weapons of the future, too expensive or too finicky for real war, the old T-72 stayed on the assembly line. They churned them out like sausages. And that's its genius. Part 3. This sausage, economics. Why quantity became a strategic weapon. Let's step back from tactics and look at economics, because war is always the continuation of economics by other means. And here, the T-72 isn't just a tank. It's a financial and industrial phenomenon. Economic context, based on open source data. Production cost. Exact Soviet-era figures for the T-72 are classified, but experts agree it was dramatically cheaper than Western counterparts. While an American M1 Abrams cost roughly $2,500,000 in the 1980s, the T-72 was estimated at $800,000 to $1 million, roughly a 1-to-3 or even 1-to-4 ratio. Logistics and standardization. The Soviet system's brilliance lay in parts commonality. The T-72, T-64, T-80, and T-90 shared countless interchangeable components: tracks, road wheels, engine parts, ammunition. Imagine two armies, one with 1,000 Abrams tanks, each needing unique spare parts, highly trained mechanics, and complex support infrastructure. The other with 5,000 T-72s, common parts, simpler maintenance, field repairs possible on the knee. Which army survives a long, grinding war of attrition? The answer is obvious. Mobilization capacity. Factories like Ural-Vaganzavod and Nizhny Tagil were built as massive production lines. In a major war, they could rapidly shift to full wartime output, producing hundreds, even thousands of tanks per year. Western economies, focused on high-tech, low-volume production, simply couldn't match that scale. My take, we often hear the mantra, it's not quantity, it's quality. But military history repeatedly proves otherwise. There's a threshold where quantity becomes a new kind of quality. You can outmaneuver 50 super tanks, but what do you do against 5,000 good enough tanks? You can't outsmart them. You can only destroy them, one by one, at enormous cost. That's what Weichert calls Russia's big stroke of luck. But I disagree. This wasn't luck. It was the result of deliberate, visionary industrial planning by Soviet designers and strategists. They didn't ask, how do we build the best tank? They asked, how do we win a massive war across a theater stretching from Europe to the Pacific? And their answer was the T-72. Part 4. Weichert's paradox. Is it pulling Russia backward or building a bridge to the future? But Weichert wouldn't be a fair analyst if he didn't point out the flip side. He provocatively argues that the same T-72 is also dragging Russia into the past. And there's truth to that. No platform can be upgraded forever. You could add a new gun, modern relict, reactive armor, French-made thermal imagers before sanctions, and the Sosniu fire control system. But at its core, it's still an old hull, old layout, with hard limits on weight and space. A three-man crew, with the commander also acting as loader, thanks to the auto-loader, which is both a blessing and a curse, no longer meets fourth-generation tank standards, where crews of two sit in isolated armored capsules. Is Weichert right? Partially. Yes, leaning on an old platform is risky. It means falling behind in foundational tech. But here's my counterpoint. The modernized T-72, like the T-72B3M, isn't the past. It's a bridge. It's the perfect test bed for future technologies under real combat conditions. Everything proven and refined on the T-72 will feed directly into Russia's true main battle tank of the 21st century, the one Weikert himself calls for. Through the T-72, Russia is learning what actually matters on the battlefield and what's just marketing fluff. Do you really need ultra-complex, expensive active protection that shoots down missiles? Or is it smarter to add another 20 millimeters of spaced armor? Does radar stealth matter for a tank that's already visible by its heat signature and dust cloud? These answers aren't found in labs. They're forged on the front lines. And they're being forged on the T-72. It's a university, a teacher, brutal, unforgiving, but offering priceless lessons. Part 5. The philosophy of the Saber versus the club. And that's where the deeper clash lies. The clash between two civilizations, two philosophies of war. The Western approach, the Saber, elegant, precise, high-tech. One tank, one target, one shot, one kill. War as a swift, decisive chess match. This is the philosophy of small wars and counterterrorism, where the enemy is technologically weak. The Soviet-Russian approach, the club, powerful, blunt, unrefined, but overwhelming. War isn't chess. It's a meat grinder testing economies and national will. This is the philosophy of total war, where victory goes not to the cleverest, but to the side with more resources and resolve. The T-72 is that club. It wasn't hidden or apologized for. It was built cheaply, in huge numbers, and built to last. And when the West Saber clashed not with other sabers, but with thousands of clubs, its elegance began to falter. Weikert notes with a mix of bitterness and, I'd say, envy, the Russians have this old, beat-up tank they make like sausages, and we don't. That sentence says it all. America has forgotten how to build simple, mass-produced systems. Its defense industry is optimized for masterpieces that cost as much as asteroids. But in a big war, the winner is the one who can make sausages. Lots of them. A lesson worth learning. So what's the takeaway? The story of the T-72, seen through the eyes of an American veteran, isn't really about one tank. It's a parable. It teaches us that simplicity isn't primitive. It's the highest form of sophistication. Building something complex is easy. Building something simple, effective, and indestructible, that's genius. Quantity is also a form of quality. Ignoring that is arrogant and dangerous. True value is often hidden beneath layers of bias and mockery. What we dismissed as junk yesterday might be tomorrow's strategic asset. The T-72 didn't just save Russia at some critical moment. It shaped its army, its defense doctrine, and ultimately its place in the world. It forced everyone to play by its unspoken rules, rules of endurance, mass, and will. And as long as the last 72 hasn't rolled off the assembly line into a museum, it will keep teaching hard lessons to friends and foes alike. That's the story. I truly believe these are the conversations we need to have. So what do you think? Do you agree with Brandon Weikert? Is the T-72 Russia's salvation, or its dead weight? Drop your take in the comments. Let's debate. And of course, subscribe to the channel. We got more deep dives, analysis, and unexpected perspectives on the things you thought you knew. Your thoughts and support are the fuel for everything we create.